rejuvenating media
your
day
weekly
by
Monday
day.
afternoon education
This
program.
is Salaam.
Insights, and I'm so excited because this is something I wanted to do for a very, very long time. From the beginning of the year is an e-classroom to provide a platform for all learners to actually benefit from the experienced subject specialist educators we have. And I've been speaking now to a expert, experienced subject specialist, Ms Savi Pather, and the platform is now hers. We are going to discuss analysis of questions. So please, everybody, here's your opportunity. This is a tutorial, a mass tutorial to help you in good stead and answering that questions during the examination. So I'm going to hand you over to Ms Pather.
Good afternoon, everyone. The answering of an essay question. First of all, let me say thank you very much, Miriam, for your lovely introduction. It raises my spirits and my ego. What we are attempting to do is to explain to young people what they have to do in an examination and how they have to approach a question. Now, lots of children come into the examination room and they sit down and they start answering the question without analyzing the question. Now, we are looking at an essay question at this point, but this methodology can be applied not only to essay questions, but to every contextual question, short questions in the exam. And it helps you to cut out the unnecessary and to focus on the most important aspects of answering that question. You need to have a deep of understanding, and you need to set out verbally, correctly, grammatically correct answers, and this helps you if you can analyze your question. So what we are looking at is the analysis of a question in the examination. We're looking at, I've put down two questions, literature questions from drama. One is The Merchant of Venice, the other one is Macbeth. Now, I always tell my young people, please, your question is guiding you. Your question is actually giving you the answer. It is all in that question, and it focuses on the main issue. Now, if I could just read the question to you. It says The Merchant of Venice, and you will notice because it's the title of the play, it's in inverted commas, is a play about the conflict between characters about deceit, prejudice, and dishonesty. Then you have your instruction. It says, in an essay of 300 to 350 words, discuss how these themes are explored in the play. Now, you are going to analyze that question. If we go down to the bottom of the whiteboard, you will look at two things that you have to do in terms of your analysis. First of all, you would circle the directive word. There may be one, there may be two, there may be three directive words. Now, what is directive word? Directive word is giving you direction. It's actually instructing you what to do. Now, your directive word is what you are going to circle. And in this, the first question, we've looked at discuss and explore. That is it's telling you, sorry, I have to bend down. It's telling you actually what you have to do. Explore, what does explore really mean? It means investigate. You have to show. So that tells you what you have to do. The other word is discuss. Discuss is saying that you have to speak about a lot of things. You can present your own point of view as long as you are able to justify. Justify is backing up your opinion. It's giving the facts. So these words, if you look at the second question, justification, explore, discuss. These things, these are words that guide you. Now, there are lots of other words in the English language. Compare, contrast, depict, illustrate, And we will, at a later time, give you the meaning of each of these words. Argue. And young people, you are very good at arguing and presenting argument to your parents and also to your teachers. So learn the exact meaning of these words and how you can explore and use what you've learned in the classroom. Right, that's the first thing in terms of circling directive words. Then you are underlining. Now, you are underlining the keywords. And what is a keyword? A keyword, key says open. So when you underline the keywords, it opens up and it brings to the fore the facts you are going to use. There is so much that we use in an examination. There's so much we learn in the classroom. You cannot remember everything. We have attitudes, we have values, we have morality, we have characters, we have setting, we have personality, we have symbolism, we have themes. What are they asking you to focus on? So let's look at when you underline the keywords. In the first question, it says, the Merchant of Venice is a conflict between characters. So you know now that you have to look at organization. Then it says, not only is there conflict between the characters, but there is conflict between the themes. And they mention now lots of themes in the Merchant of Venice, as also in Macbeth. But they are asking you to focus on the deceit, the prejudice, and the dishonesty. So now you can focus on what you have to select. As I said, the question gives you the answer. And it's telling you in the second part, 300 words. So you know you can go above, but do not give less. And do not write 100 words more than is required, because you will be penalized, and the examiner will not mark what comes after the required number of words. So I trust that this gives you some idea on how to analyze a question. We've looked also at, may I do Macbeth?
Yes.
Macbeth focuses now. The question here again, inverted commas because it's the title of the play, focuses on isolation and meaninglessness are consequences of self-interest and wickedness. Right. Write an essay in which you explore to what degree. Now, this is reflected in the characterization of Macbeth and Lady Macbeth. Your justification must be rooted in the text. So it's telling you, confine yourself to the play. Confine yourself to the two characters, Lady Macbeth and Macbeth. But you may also have to mention some of the other characters. Here again, we've circled the instruction words, justification and explore, and we've underlined the keywords. And it tells you self-interest, wickedness, isolation, consequences, and how this is manifested in these two characters and their interaction with some of the other characters, with Duncan. And these are just examples. You may be studying other books or other poetry, but this gives you a plan so that when you get into the examination room, what you are not doing, and please, I go down on my knees and I pray and I ask you, do not tell a story. You will get absolutely no marks for telling a story. There are things that you will have to discuss. As I said, there's settings, symbolism, style, tone, mood, feeling, atmosphere that are relevant, and at a later time we will discuss, because these are significant aspects that need to be discussed in your paper. But at this point we don't have enough time. So the most important thing is, do not tell a story. Also, when you are setting out your question, your answer, all of you have been taught language, punctuation, spelling. your structure and your language, your sentence construction, and don't use long sentences. My advice to young people who are answering in an exam is to use the simple form, simple or complex, but don't go into compound sentence construction. You lose your focus. Also, it makes it difficult when the examiner is marking. So what I ask you is the simple sentence helps you set down a particular point, a pertinent point. So you need to look at your structure. You need to look at content. It must be well grounded in the text. And you must be able to interpret and show what you have learned. Give your opinion. Literature, reading, whether you are reading a holy book or you're reading for pleasure, but there's always a message, there's always a moral, there is always an ideal, there's always something that is presented for the future that you can base your own life on. There's an experience that you can adapt for yourself. So use the literature to enrich your lives. And I always say literature is for life.
Absolutely. Life lessons we learn through our literature and from our literature.
Yes.
And those themes that we have, that we learn, you take it, it helps you to, I think, reflect and introspect who you are in. Am I that person? Am I a prejudiced person? Just thinking of that. Do I have self-interest? Do I do things out? So as much as it's about giving your understanding about that, literature allows for lots of introspection of you as a character and looking at yourself as a character.
Yes. And how would you react and it also presents situations to you that you may find there's some conflict within yourself. There's some great decision to be made. How do you handle it? But you learn from not doing what certain characters do, and also of your own self comes out. And if I may make inroads into your discussion earlier about reading our holy books, it's part of literature. Our holy books they have so many values that we can learn from. And we read it, we just read it and we tend to forget about it. But there is the core, the moral, the values that your parents have inculcated in you as a young person, and which now you will pass on to your children.
Ms. Pather, what I think as a student, and I know when I was a student, is, your introduction in those linking words, because sometimes you have so much to say and you have all these facts, but to put pen to paper and to actually put it and to express yourself, and I think therein lies a challenge. So any tips and advice in terms of how do we actually then write down in, because essays have a definite form in a format and it needs to follow a certain structure. Any advice in terms of paragraphing and what we write and how to say in those linking words?
Yes. First of all, there are three aspects to it. It's your introduction, which must be a strong point that you are making.
Example. Can you give us an example of a strong introduction?
All right. Let's look at the wickedness of Lady Macbeth and Macbeth. You can say, I firmly believe that evil and wicked are strong features of Lady Macbeth and not so much of Macbeth. It is Lady Macbeth who has influenced her husband because she has this idea that she wants to be queen. So you are saying, I firmly believe, right, the wickedness and evil is not so much in Macbeth, and it is in Lady Macbeth who has manipulated her husband to usurp the throne, to kill Duncan. So that's now, you made a standpoint. That is what you believe. Now you will go on to prove how she has manipulated. So it is the consequences that arise out of this. It's not so much Macbeth. Macbeth is a weak man. He is ambitious. He wants to become king, but he doesn't have and I'm going to use a simple word, he doesn't have the guts to do it. But it is Lady Macbeth who says, come, evil, come into me, unsex me. Women are supposed to be delicate and kind. They are the mothers. But she says, she calls on the evil spirits to unsex her, to make her, to give her the power to control her husband. And she's the one that hands the dagger to her husband. She plans and plots the whole thing. Now you go on to prove how it's her self-interest, not her husband's self-interest. So in your, what we used to call the body, we now call it the development. Now you take 3 or 4 points. You can't discuss her entire role in this manipulative role, but you can do it in 3 or 4 paragraphs. And in those 3 or 4 paragraphs, you are developing your standpoint in the introduction. And then you bring in other characters. And then you use foils. You know what a foil is?
Let's just explain to our learners out there as well what a foil is as well.
Okay, a foil is when you have one character set against another character. Now, one character has certain aspects to their characters. Another one may be evil. One may, like Duncan was a good character. Macbeth or Lady Macbeth was evil. So the foil is one highlights the goodness or the evil of the other. That's what we mean by a foil. It's like a piece of foil. You know, you put it shines. So it can highlight evil, it can highlight goodness. So if you are a nicer person than I am, you are my foil.
No, I don't want to be your foil.
But that
we hear you. We hear you in terms of the foil, and I think it's given clarity, especially to our grade 10, 11 in matric learners. And what would be a strong conclusion in terms of the marker who's marking it will say, the student is proficient and they understand literature. They have a good grounding of their set work and they truly understand it by way of their writing. So you've wrote this very, very strong introduction, which was your topic sentence, and it helped you develop along the way. And what would, in your words, would be a strong conclusion for that particular, yes?
I would just repeat my introduction, but just reinforce it and say, and this is what I have proved, that Lady Macbeth has been the manipulative force in the life of not only her husband, but in the destruction of a kingdom. So it's merely a repetition of what's come in your introduction. And then, of course, and words escape me now because it's 10 years since I've taught Macbeth. Try to find a little lofty word. And in our next lesson, I'm going to give some words that are more profound, more strong. So find words like that and just add them in. But don't say, oh, well, I think that I've proved it. Say, I have proved that there is wickedness in the kingdom because of this evil that exists in these two characters. But once again, I will reiterate that it is Lady Macbeth that has been the vile character in the entire kingdom.
On that point, that lofty, there's your lofty word you just told us is vile, because now we've used evil there, and I mean repulsive and vile, and I think vile would just be so conclusive in terms of that for Lady Macbeth, and I think that's another word that you could use. So it's all about using those words. So I think as students, while we study, let's see synonyms instead of evil. Let's just see, we can put reprehensible, vile, and just use those words. So you're not using the same word over and over again, because that shows your understanding of the English language as well.
Yes, and I've got a list of words I have, which we'll type out and you can post it. on wherever.
So what we can do is to assist the learners that you will give us a whole list of a synonym evil and what we could use in place of that in terms of for that particular context, because sometimes what learners try to do is when you look at a book and then you take out your thesaurus and you're looking for words, and sometimes you find a word but it will not be appropriate in appropriate context. So that's what we need to do, that we're not just taking words and just finding a synonym for it. It needs to be in the correct context.
And on that note, Miriam, something that I don't know if you remember when I taught, always start my lesson, and I think teachers, we must need to convey this to teachers as well, is that start your lesson with pertinent vocabulary to the book that you are teaching. That's very important. And also, when you are answering, now when in the development, the body of the essay, use quotations. If you cannot remember the quotation, if you can't remember that Lady Macbeth said, is this unsex me? Or Macbeth as he walks along and says, is this a dagger I see before me? If you can't remember that, you can't remember the quotation, then paraphrase it, use your own words, right? But if you are using the quotation, please use quotation marks, because it's not your own. It belongs to Shakespeare.
And with that, I think we're going to start. Thank you for this e-lesson and e-learning, and this will be available as a podcast for future reference. And Ms. Pather, we'd like to ask you where we're going to see you in future, because I think you've given us analysis of essay type questions for our literature. But what I think also we need is just some advice and counsel on poetry, because poetry is a whole different ball game, so to speak. And in terms of just how to analyze, especially when it comes to unseen poems, we feel daunted and we become overwhelmed. So I'd like to thank you for coming. And our next lesson, can we please then focus on the poetry?
Yes, I had planned actually to do the poetry today, but of course we have time constraints. But definitely there's a lot in poetry and the unseen poem, and learners need to be very confident when they approach the unseen poem. Is a very easy poem to analyze, but they lack the confidence to attack that.
So you're going to give us the confidence. I love what you said, because when you play sport and even the games they play on social media platforms and the gaming and that, it's always about attack. So I'm so excited you're speaking language of this generation, and that, so hopefully we're looking forward to it, that we're going to attack poetry, to have the confidence to attack poetry the next time we have our e-lesson. Thanks so much for coming on air, and join you. All the best.
An absolute pleasure.